Thank you so much for joining us, Rochelle Galindo. You're a candidate for House District 50 with the Democratic Party and a former Greeley City Councilor. I want to start with one and sort of let you take it away. Why do you want to run for District 50?
That's a great question. Well, I am running for House District 50 because I am one of you, and I want to ensure that Greeley, Evans, and Garden City has the type of leadership that reflects the people. I was born and raised in Greeley, and I come from a working class family, and I saw them struggle to provide a better life for me. So I want to ensure that all Coloradans have access to the quality of life that this state has to offer. Now, what does that mean? That means access to good jobs, a good education, and to your elected officials.
Awesome, thank you so much. We'll get right into it and start talking about some issues with the legislature. The Colorado legislature recently passed Senate Bill 1, allocating hundreds of millions of dollars toward transportation projects and setting the stage for a bond issue in 2019. Do you support the legislation, and is it enough?
I definitely support the piece of legislation that was passed recently in the legislature. It was done as a bipartisan effort, which I really appreciate. I think that we're covering all grounds when we include both parties in trying to resolve issues. I don't think that it's enough, but it's definitely a good step forward to addressing the transportation issues that are impacting all Coloradans. Growing traffic is a threat to the quality of life here in Colorado. So I think it's important that we continue to fund fixing our roads, but also supporting efforts like I have on the Greeley City Council that promote regional transportation options and increase public transportation so that we reduce congestion and emissions on our roads.
I want to switch gears and talk about education a little bit. Excuse me. We'll start with the Colorado legislature also passed a bill that cut retirement benefits for teachers and other public employees. Did you support that legislation, and why or why not?
No, I'm actually a CEA union member, being a head custodian at an elementary school at Lafayette Elementary. And I think it's important that we are securing these retirement programs for people who are working in the education industry. Is that it?
Yeah.
Did that address the question?
I think so. And we'll get into a little K through 12 here. There's always unfinished business when it comes to the legislature, but I think a particular thorn in the side for Representative Dave Young, the man you'd replace at the state legislature, is the inability to do something about K through 12 funding despite 2 years of work by Colorado superintendents. Now, obviously, there is a ballot issue coming up that could help with that in the next legislative session. But does the K through 12 education funding formula need to be changed? And if Young's bill wasn't the right approach, how would you approach it?
I think Young's bill is definitely a good approach to addressing this. Him being a former educator and working so hard at the legislature on the JBC, working with the budget. So I think he has a really good idea on how to address and solve these issues. So I'm 100% support of this ballot initiative, and hopefully it does get on the ballot. As far as the next question, I'm actually a product of the District 6 school system, so I understand how important a quality education is. Recently, we were able to pass a mill levy override for District 6, and even though that was a huge win for our community, it's still not enough. Our schools are continuing to grow, and they're fighting for a small piece of the pie, and it's important that we have leadership at the state level fighting to increase that piece of pie so that we're providing a quality education for all Colorado students, no matter their zip code.
Awesome. You're going to be able to tell I'm a former education reporter. One more, tuition in higher education has never been higher, saddling more students with more debt every year. How would you address higher education funding if elected?
Well, actually, I am a recent college graduate, so I have a huge pile of student loan debt that I'm still trying to pay off. And I think that I have a unique perspective on how to address that, especially because UNC is in District 50. I understand what these college students are facing as far as the struggles that they are trying to endure in order to just pay for college as well as finishing their degree. So as a state legislature, I will work to ensure that students graduating from college are graduating less burdened by student loan debt.
For each of these interviews, we'll ask one candidate-specific question. Yours is now. You did serve on the Greeley City Council. Your opponent, however, has represented District 50 before. How will you persuade voters that you have the experience to get things done at the state capitol?
Well, I definitely have experience as far as getting things done on the Greeley City Council. Being the youngest person and probably the most diverse, I was able to get a lot of things passed, including a huge win for our community, which was a resolution in support of immigrant and refugee residents. Though I know the work that my opponent has done, and I respect everything that he's done for our community, I think I have a different vision for our future. Being somebody who reflects the community and reflects the district better, I think that I would be able to better understand the issues that regular people are facing in District 50. So, like I said, I'm running because I want to ensure that we have leadership that reflects the people.
Switching gears here, would you be an advocate for water issues at the state capitol? If so, what would be your approach to the various issues, and what do you think are the key issues?
Well, being a former Greeley City Council member, I have a lot of experience working with water because Greeley is a very powerful entity as far as water in this state. We own a lot of it, and we have a strong water board. So in 2015, Governor Hickenlooper actually released Colorado's first statewide water plan. And I think it's important that we follow through with this plan in order to ensure that there's enough water for our recreation and agricultural economies and to support our growing communities and sustain our natural environment. Being on the Greeley City Council, I learned specifically that taking this issue seriously is very important because, like I said, Greeley owns so much of it, and we have a history of making smart decisions for future water consumption. Now, addressing our air quality, I think, is a really important aspect in this as well, because even though we're storing water, we have to make sure that the water we're storing is not evaporating at a higher rate so that we can plan for future consumption.
Definitely, and we're going to start jumping around rather wildly here, but these are, I think, key topics for your potential constituents here. Do you believe Colorado needs to do more when it comes to gun control? And if so, what are your ideas?
I believe in a person's Second Amendment right to own a gun, but I also believe that this conversation should be more centered around mental health and ensuring access to mental health resources so that we can prevent future tragedies from happening.
I'll do a follow-up there. Do you think we have enough funding and enough services for mental health in this state?
I don't believe so.
Democrats have long lamented the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, pointing to the disconnect between a booming Colorado economy and a government that struggles to fund services, including mental health, transportation, education. Where do you stand on Tabor, and what's the solution?
Well, the issue with Tabor is that it takes the power of the purse away from our legislative branch here in this state. And that makes it hard to address issues like mental health, even education funding, because each of these issues has to be brought to the voters. Now, bills passed at the legislature are only able to pass as a single subject bill, and so because Tabor was passed as a state initiative, it would require at least 15 different bills at the legislature to address. So I think it's important that we are finding quality solutions to this problem and seeing how we can address it with the voters themselves.
Transitioning to oil and gas, which is big for the economy in Weld County, do you believe Colorado has strong enough rules and regulations on oil and gas? If not, what would you like to see?
Well, my father actually works in oil and gas, so I understand that these jobs are people's livelihoods. It's important that we continue to work with oil and gas companies to ensure that they are being good neighbors to the communities that they're developing in. And also, I think that, it's coming to a point where oil and gas may not be our only energy resource. So as Colorado moves towards more renewable energy resources, I am a huge advocate for ensuring that we are providing retraining programs for workers coming out of the oil and gas industry and are moving into the renewable energy industry.
In 2018, the Colorado legislature was rocked by accusations of sexual harassment. What was your reaction to those developments, including Representative Steve Lebsock's ouster and then inaction on the part of Republicans in the Colorado Senate?
I think addressing the sexual harassment issue is a huge movement that has been a long time coming. It's bringing behaviors that have been deemed as normal to light and showing that they are in fact inappropriate. And I think people are rethinking and thinking twice about how they approach others and what they say. And I think this will show more respect towards other people and treating others with dignity, and hopefully having those hard conversations so that consent can be seen as something that is not taboo. Consent needs to be addressed, and it needs to be something at the forefront of the conversation.
Definitely. Colorado, along with other states, has been targeted by the President Donald Trump administration for so-called sanctuary cities. What are your thoughts on the federal government's stance here, and is there anything you would do or could do at the state legislature?
Well, I think it's important to note that even though the White House administration has taken a strong stance on immigration, it's important to note also that our national legislature has refused to act on it. And so it's written in the Constitution that if the federal level does not address certain issues, then it's up to state and local governments to address that. And that's why I've been such a hard advocate for addressing these issues, especially as a Greeley City Council member. In 2006, when the ICE raids happened at the meatpacking plant and over 300 undocumented people were deported, I was actually a junior in high school, so I saw the effects that it had on my classmates, on family, friends. And so when I was on the Greeley City Council in 2017, after hateful rhetoric started to come out of Washington again, I wanted to use my position to ensure that that never happened in our community again. I don't know if people realize, but that was one of the largest ICE raids in our nation's history. And so ensuring that we're building bridges with these people and addressing crimes that are happening within this population is very important. So when I proposed that resolution, I really wanted to build a bridge between the city government as well as undocumented families so that they know that, this community is standing up for them and they can feel comfortable in coming for help regardless of their immigration status.
Well, we've covered a lot of topics, but we couldn't possibly cover everything that's important in this campaign. I'd like to turn it over to you, Rochelle. Is there anything voters should know about you or anything you want to tell the voters about your candidacy?
Sure. Let me take a minute to recoup. Many people see me as their former city council member and a community leader, but I would like to share a little bit about how I grew up. I actually grew up in a domestic violence household. And being in that situation at that age, I really felt helpless. I wasn't really sure what I could do to better my situation. And so as I grew older, I really got tired of feeling helpless, and I decided to stand up to my father to protect my mother. And when I did, my mother saw me stand up, and she realized that she needed to stand up too. And she found the strength within herself to leave. And it was at that point in my life that I realized what kind of difference I could make just by speaking up. And so that's why I've devoted my life to standing up for those who are unable to stand up for themselves. And if you think about it, voters right now are feeling a lot like me at a young age, helpless, not really sure what they can do to better their situation. There's mistrust in the government no matter what side of the aisle you stand on, and I think it's important that we start to make people excited about the future of their government. And that's why I'm running to be your state representative. Hopefully I can count on your support and vote.